Hello, everyone. My name is Simone Lewis, and today I will be exploring and explaining the impacts of bison grazing on grassland bird populations through systemic literature review. To start the systematic review, I would like to begin with the introduction. Uh, Bison have a cultural and historical significance, especially with Native Americans. For thousands of years, Native American populations have co-evolved with bison herds. This coevolution has enabled or inhibit this coevolution has enabled Native American tribes to develop a deeper relationship with bison, who they commonly refer to as relatives, and they also refer to bison as buffalo. Leading into the 1800s and all throughout the 1800s, following European colonization, the bison population throughout the Great Plains and the Midwest tallgrass areas were almost completely wiped out. In the late 1800s, of the few remaining native bison populations, organizations aim to rescue the bison herds and restore bison populations, remove them from they remove them from their habitats of the Great Plains to avoid extinction. So the bison herds that were reintroduced in the early 2000s and post 2015 in the Midwest, they are actually direct relatives to those original bison populations that were saved in the 1800s. Tallgrass areas were also known to be maintained through fire applications, and bison herds are actually attracted to freshly burned grassland areas. Bison grazing has actually been recognized for having many benefits to a tallgrass prairie ecosystem. Prairies serve as vital parts of a valuable ecosystem where many plants and insects depend on native prairie plants to provide habitat. There are many species of native bird populations that also depend on tallgrass prairies of the Great Plains and of the Midwest that are in critical population decline, leading from post-industrialization due to habitat loss. Also, to touch on the importance of a prairie ecosystem, native prairie plants also provide extremely rich soil, which is predominantly used for agricultural purposes. Here are some important key terms that I thought were important to include or explain prior to reading this systematic review. The first is keystone species. This is a species that have a disproportionately large importance within that ecosystem. Bison are recognized as a keystone species. The second key term is pyrrhic herbivory, which is defined as herbivory promoted through the use of fire. Bison, in particular, as I mentioned before, are attracted to freshly burned grassland environments. The last important key term is a remnant prairie. This is a grass-dominated area or grassland that has remained predominantly untouched following European colonization. Most tallgrass prairie ecosystems are restored prairies. There are very few remnant prairies remaining. There is previous research studies that were conducted, which include field collection and analysis, observational population sampling, and various restoration applications that were previously applied and explored before this systematic review was conducted. However, upon analyzing the evidence available that reflects the impact of bison coupled with pyrrhic herbivory on native grassland bird species, I found that there was lacking evidence. Therefore, this review has the potential to focus on additional policy for the protection of tallgrass prairie sites and species within these sites, while highlighting the extreme importance that restoration practices have had on these critical habitats and for the wildlife. My research question and the primary focus of this systematic review is how has the reintroduction of bison into the tallgrass prairie ecosystems provided for restoration to populations of tallgrass prairie birds? And pictured is a photo that I actually took. I visited Nachusa grasslands in Illinois, July 1st this year of this summer, and I was able to witness a bison herd up close. In order to start this systematic review, I needed to form a question. The question formation was provided by Medical University of South Carolina Libraries. The various question formats were PICO, PEO, and Spider, of which I chose PICO, which is shown slightly to the right here. As you can see, population, intervention, comparison, which is an optional variable to include, and then the outcome. The population, I explored tallgrass prairie bird populations. The intervention is bison grazing added into the ecosystem post 2015. The comparison is being compared to current uses of control burns and native planting. And then the outcome I am looking for is a successful population restoration for native bird species. Next, 5 keywords needed to be developed and in order to be searched throughout databases. These 5 keywords were developed in order for their for their direct relation to the research focus. These keywords, as described here, are tallgrass prairie, bison, biodiversity, restoration, and grassland bird. These keywords were applied to the search engines of the databases JSTOR and Academic Search Complete in order to find the articles necessary to be included in the systematic review. This is part of the preliminary screening. To describe the search criteria continued following, I needed to select the inclusion and the exclusion criteria for the article screening. The inclusion criteria for the sources include these articles must include tallgrass prairie specific bird species, native plant and animal species. The study sites must be in the Midwest. They must discuss how reintroducing bison has impacted the ecosystem. They must be peer reviewed, published in the last 10 years, so between 2015 and 2025. And then the study design may include experimental and/or observational data. Articles excluded were published before 2015 and were not in English. In Figure 1, we have a visual representation of the study selection process, which includes the number of studies identified, screened, included, and excluded. From the records identified from the 2 databases previously mentioned, there was 1,543. 880 of these were automatically excluded due to not being accessed for free public view. There were 663 total screened after filters were applied, including when the article was published, so after 2015 and either up to the year 2025. After this, there were 48 reports retrieved, and then 20 were selected for this systematic review. Here is a photo I took on July 31st, and this is one of the remnant prairie sites that I get to work at this summer in Markham, Illinois. Here you see a lot of tall grass, a lot of tall green, and then some flowers, some purple and orange spread throughout there. Deer actually hide fully in this. I don't know if you can see how tall everything is, but everything during midsummer is beautiful, green, and tall. Here are some key findings of the articles. Under the study site, 15 out of the 20 articles conducted research in the Midwest, which included 8 in Illinois, 3 in Kansas, 3 in Oklahoma, and 1 in Ohio. 2 articles were included which discussed the Great Plains, and these were included to discuss comparative measures and comparative restoration applications between the western part of the United States and the Midwest. And then 1 article was inclusive in just generalized North America. The duration, studies ranged from 1 month to 20 years. Most studies were taking place on a 2 to 3 year basis for the selected study site. The longest study is what took place over 20 years, and then the shortest study took place over 1 month. Part of the quality analysis for these articles was analyzing and assessing the risk of bias, which is provided by the ROB2 tool through CoTrain. The risk of bias through the articles was demonstrated to be low risk. The two biases that I assessed were performative and reporting bias, and the low risk demonstrates a higher quality and reflects the transparency of the evidence provided from the chosen articles. Here is my study characteristics table. This is a custom spreadsheet made through Microsoft Excel, and it summarizes the study characteristics, including the study site, duration of the study, sample collection type, or the data type, species included in the study, and then the type of restoration practice that was applied during the study. Here is the risk of bias algorithm diagram that was followed, provided by the ROB2 risk of bias analysis. For this systematic review, I selected to use domain 2 risk of bias, and this assesses deviations from the intended interventions which affect the assignment to intervention. Under the domain 2 risk bias analysis, there are 7 questions or 7 steps used to analyze each article. From these questions, based on a yes or no answer, you can follow this diagram to see if the selected article demonstrates low risk, some concern, or high risk. Here is my risk of bias spreadsheet. This is a custom spreadsheet created through Microsoft Excel that summarizes how the ROB tool was used and how the questions were used to assess the risk of bias in the selected articles. The articles are listed on the left, and then the 2.1 to 2.7 follow numerical order of the questions that are presented on the algorithm diagram. As you can see, these questions, I only made it up to 2.3 based on my responses following the algorithm diagram, which led to low risk being determined. Through this systematic review, it has been determined that there has been restoration success demonstrated through thriving populations as a direct result of pyric herbivory by bison, followed by prescribed burns of these restored and remnant grassland areas. Although there are current actions that organizations and volunteers have provided, which include prescribed burns and invasive species removal and native plantings that have helped restore these ecosystems, there is more effort that is needed in order to protect these habitats, which include the implementation of protections in order to prevent further habitat loss. Here are the sources cited that were used in this PowerPoint. Thank you for listening to this PowerPoint presentation on the systematic literature review and report of how bison grazing and the reintroduction of bison into tallgrass prairie ecosystems have impacted species of native birds. And I hope you learned something new.